Ya.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 4 and we are going to present about our chapter, our course, that is assessing listening. Before we straight up to the content, firstly, we want to introduce ourselves. My name is Fawzian Rakhmadiar.
Putra Giza.
My name is Riki Afriyanto.
My name is Tareq Al-obadi. My name is Tareq Al-obadi.
Assessing grammar and vocabulary. Second issue in the assessment of language skill is the age-old question of the role of grammar and vocabulary. Any test of grammar or vocabulary involve two or more of the separate skills of listening, speaking, reading, or writing. Observing the performance of the four skills. The first important principle for assessing a learner's competence is considers the feasibility of the results of a single performance. This can take the form of one or more of the following designs. First, several tests that are combined to form an assessment. Second, a single test with multiple tasks to account for learning styles and performance variables. The third, in-class and extra-class grade work. For the last one, somewhat less conventional forms of assessment, sample journal, review, conference, observation, self-assessment, and peer assessment.
Next is basic types of listening. There are 4 basic types of listening. There are recognized. You recognize speech sounds and hold temporary event of term of them in short-term memory. Second one is interpretation. You can use bottom-up interpretation to the message and assign a literal and indeed meaning the utterance. Third is context and content. You determine the type of speech, even monologue, interpersonal, or transactional dialogue that is being processed and attend to its context, who its speaker is, location, purpose, and the content of the message. The last one is retention of meaning. In the most case, except for repetition tasks, which involve short-term memory only, you prone the exact linguistic form in which the message was originally received in favor of conceptually retaining important or relevant information in long-term memory. Next is each of these stages represents a potential assessment objective. The first one is comprehending surface structure elements such as phonemics, words, intonation, or a grammatical category. Second is understanding pragmatic context. The third one is determining meaning of auditory input. The last one is developing the GIS, a global or comprehensive understanding. Next, there are 4 common types of listening performance. The first one is intensive, selective, responsive, and extensive. For extensive is listening for perception of the components of a larger stretch of language. Responsive is a short stretch of language in order to make an equally short response. Next is selective is processing stretch of discourse such as short monologue for several minutes to scan for certain information. The last one is extensive. Extensive is listening to develop a top-down global understanding of spoken language. Next. Next point is micro and macro scale of listening. Micro scale is discriminate among the dist distinctive sound of English. Next is retain chunks of language of different lengths in short-term memory. Recognize English stress patterns, word in stress and unstressed position, rhythmic structure, intonation contours, and their roles in signaling information. Next is recognize reduced forms of words, distinguish word boundaries, recognize a core of words in and interpret word order patterns and their significance. Next is process speech at different rates of delivery. Next is process speech containing pauses, errors, corrections, and other performance variable. Recognize grammatical word classes, system patterns, rules, and elliptical forms. 9. Detect sentence constituents and distinguish between major and minor constituents. 10. Recognize that particular meaning may be expressed in different grammatical forms. Next is recognize cohesive device in spoke discourse. For macro skill is recognize the communicative function of utterance according to situation, participants, and goals. Next is in first situation, participants and goals using a real world knowledge. 14. From events and idea describes predict outcomes, infer links and connection between events, reduce cost and effects, and detect such relation as main idea, supporting idea, new information, given information, generalization, and exemplification. 15 is distinguish between literal and implied meanings. 16 is use facial, kinesthetic, and body language and other nonverbal clues to disappear meanings. The last one is develop and use a battery of listening strategies such as detecting keywords, the meaning of words from context, appealing for help, and signaling comprehension or lack thereof.
Consider consider the following list of what makes listening difficult. Adapted like from fall 2018 until 2013, 2018, 2010, 2011 until 2013. Here we have like 9 points. So I'm gonna explain one by one. Clustering, attending to appropriate off-language phrases, clauses, constituents. Redundancy, recognizing the kinds of repetition, rephrasing, elaboration, and insertion that underhears spoken language often contains and benefiting from the recognition. Reduce forms, understanding the reduced forms that may not have been a part of an English learner's part learning experience in classes where only formal textbook language was presented. Number four, performance variables, being able to weed out hesitations, false starts, pauses, and correction in natural speech. Number five, colloquial language, comprehending idioms, slang, reduced forms, and shared culture knowledge. Number six, discourse markers, understanding discourse markers such as my first point, secondly, nevertheless, next, and conclusion, and so on, which can be especially difficult at academic lectures. Number seven, rate of delivery, keeping up with the speech of delivery, processing automatically as the speaker continues. Number eight, stress, rhythm, and intonation, correctly understanding prosodic elements of a spoken language, which is almost always much more difficult than understanding smaller phonological bits and pieces. Number nine, interactions, managing the interactive volume of language from listening to speaking to listening and so on. Next point is designing, yeah, designing assessment task, intensive and listening. Number one is recognizing phone and morphological elements. Number two, paraphrase, recognition. Designing assignments, task, responsive and listening. Appropriate responses to a question, open-ended responses to a question.
For the next is designing assessment task selective listening. Listening clause, information transfer, and assessment is sentence repetitions. For the listening clause is a practice exercise where learners have a words missing from a text. These are removed regular intervals, for example, every 5 words. This consists with a gap and file exercise, where words are chosen and removed in order to practice a specific language point. And information transfer is like our knowledge and understanding of L1 impact, our understanding of L2. We can transfer grammar, vocabulary, syntax, semantic, spelling, morphology, punctuation, structure, and culture of L2 language. And the sentence repetitions is a sentence is based in as a reflection of an underlying language ability factor rather than a major construct with a specific role in language processing. And the next is designing assessment tasks, extensive listening, and dictation, communicative stimulus, authentic listening. For the dictations, like to write down the word that someone say so that they can be used in a letter and or a report. Our communicative stimulus is a communicative variable types formed in a popular genre of assessment task in which the test taker is presented with a stimulus monologue or conversation and then is asked to respond to set of comprehension questions. And the next is authentic listening task. Is in general, there are two types, different kinds, and there are two different kinds of materials. You can listen to authentic materials. That this includes anything that is unscripted. For example, live structure and seminars, the English you hear in television, radio, and English spoken outside the classroom. So I think that's all from our presentation. Group 4. Thank you so much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.